Okay, welcome back, everybody. You'll have to forgive me for any weird noises this time around. I have a kitten on my lap, uh, but I don't really know where else to put her, so, we keep going. Lots has happened in the past hour as of the time of recording. Um, Usually, I record these videos on Wednesdays and have them uploaded on Thursdays. I was a bit delayed this time. I was going to get it out today, which is Friday. Um, and I recorded it and I uploaded it to YouTube, and I was about to press the post button, and I checked my phone and I saw news. So thank goodness I didn't. I was able to update things a little bit because Arman Sarukian is out of his lightweight title fight against Islam Makhachev. But in any case, it is UFC 311. It's time for the Raccoon picks. Let's get going. Of course, we start off with my MMA culpa, as in, how much should you trust me? So, I have picked 129 fights on this YouTube channel. 78 of those have been correct, and one of those has been a no contest. That gives me a 61% accuracy. 10 of those fights I believe to be robberies, which, if you believe me on all of them, would bring me up to a 69% pick accuracy. We got two in the last card. I forget what they were. I think Gan Volkov was one. I picked Volkov as a big underdog, and he won the fight and got robbed. And what was the other one? Was it Aljamain Sterling, Movsar Evloev? That was a very close fight, so you can disagree on that being a robbery. But, in my opinion, Aljo pretty clearly won that fight. In any case, I'm between a 61% and a 69% accuracy. Now, I will also often pick the method of victory, so submission, decision, knockout, technical submission, whatever. And when I do, I have a 70% accuracy. 53 of the correct picks I made on this channel have had the method picked. 37 times I've picked that method correctly, and 16 times I've picked incorrectly. So that gives me a 70% accuracy. Okay, let's start off with some quick picks. So, Bogdan Guskov faces off against PFL veteran Billy Elikana in his UFC debut. And Karol Hoza faces Eileen Perez, two very physical fighters in the women's bantamweight division. Fun fight there. Uh, you know, Ranked women's bantamweights. I know what people say about the women's bantamweight division, but these are two fun fighters. These are two fighters that are liked for good reason. I don't think women's bantamweight is as bad as people say. It's nowhere near as bad as like middleweight or something. And it'll be even better when Kayla Harrison becomes champion. And I think in these two fights, Bogdan Guskov will win and Karol Hoza will win over Eileen Perez. Underdog pick there. Also, we have Peyton Talbot versus the grizzled veteran Raoni Barcelos, and Kevin Holland versus Reinier de Ridder. I think Peyton Talbot wins. I think that was pretty obvious. And I'm going to pick the underdog, Reinier de Ridder, to beat Kevin Holland. I don't think Kevin Holland works very well at middleweight. Even though Reinier de Ridder is a bit of a... Well, he's a funny fighter. I don't think Kevin Holland has what it takes to stop him at this point. Underdog of the night. If on a fight newly elevated to the main card, I do not think that Sergey Spivak will win. However, he's a big underdog with, I think, a big chance of winning that people aren't really talking about. He's got cool judo. He's got solid grappling. He's got a decent game on the feet, although he underperformed against Ciryl Gane. He gassed and stuff. And Gelton Almeida is beatable. So if you are going to pick an underdog, one who I don't think will win but has a better path to victory than people are saying, would be Sergey Spivak, who I think is a very underrated heavyweight. Okay, let's get into some big fights here. Jiri Prochazka versus Jamahal Hill. This is a great fight. This is a fight that, we've been wanting for years at this point. To some extent since Jiri became champion, to another extent since Jamahal became champion. And this is a fun one, right? I think that we've kind of been reevaluating both these fighters recently. I think that people have been reducing their estimation of Jiri Prochazka since seeing him against a top-level striker and Alex Pereira twice just get totally outclassed, and thinking, okay, maybe his funky style is less of a mystery now, and he's more beatable, etc., etc. And Jamahal Hill is, in not a great spot either, because he also fought Alex Pereira and he also got kind of, you know, beat up. It didn't go well for him. Well, he didn't get beat up, really. He got caught very early. He didn't really do anything before he got knocked out in the first round, except kick Alex in the nuts. But he reacted to it very badly, and now people are pretending that he was never good. So it's kind of interesting. We're on Yuri Prochazka. We have a guy who is... I mean, I think both of these guys are kind of being underrated, but I think that there's a better reason to reduce your estimation of Yuri Prochazka. So kind of what we have in this fighter, Yuri Prochazka is like a very, very physical, very unorthodox striker with solid wrestling, solid jiu-jitsu, incredible heart and great chin, going up against Jamahal Hill, who's sort of a more classic kickboxer. Emphasis on the boxing, but he's got some sneaky kicks too. His southpaw. And, both these guys are former champions. I don't know if there's title implications. Maybe if Alex Pereira loses to Magomed Ankalaev, but I think in that case he's getting an immediate rematch. And yeah, I mean it's an interesting fight for sure. I think that the key attribute here is whether Jamahal Hill will be able to withstand Yuri Prochazka's pressure, right? I think that Jamahal has absolute dynamite in his hands, much more than some of the more technical guys that have had their way with Yuri. Like Alexander Rakic, who was really hurting him as, again, a super technical and not very powerful fighter. Yeah, I think both these guys have a lot of power in their hands. And I think both of them are, they hit hard. They're guys who get knockouts. I think that we've seen Yuri struggle in the past with more sort of solid kickboxers. He made easy work of Volkan Oezdemir. Did not have an easy time with Dominic Reyes, but I mean, he beat him in a pretty brutal fashion. And we've seen him get by against technical kickboxers basically by doing like a TV character thing where he just wants it more and he just decides to win, despite being kind of outclassed. We saw it against Alexander Rakic at UFC 300, where he was getting hurt pretty badly against a guy without much power in Rakic. He basically just decided to win and won. Dominic Reyes literally knocked him out, and then he came back to win. Volkan Oezdemir he made easier work of, and then obviously it did not work against Alex Pereira because Alex Pereira is just a bit different, right? Jamahal Hill, on the other hand, does not have all the names in his resume that Yuri Prochazka does, but he's got a longer tenure in the UFC. He's got some pretty incredible wins, pretty impressive knockouts, and he, I think, is a bit more of that sort of technical kickboxer. And I think the question here is, does Yuri's pressure break Jamahal? And I think, again, we did not see Jamahal Hill at his best his last time out. I think he kind of rushed back from his Achilles injury. And obviously that's had more time to heal now. So I guess I'm curious to see how that all works out. And so I think that he's probably going to be... And he's going to know that this is what he's going to have to do. He's probably going to be a bit less sort of cautious than he was against Alex, where he spent a lot of time walking backwards and basically just allowed Alex to make one read on him, right? Whereas against Jiri, I think he's going to know that he has to walk forward sometimes, and I think some of his more useful techniques, he's got that really good head kick, right, from open stance, and so that's a useful technique against a guy like Jiri. Kick him in the body, kick him in the head, take advantage of the fact that he does not like to keep his hands up. But you can't be walking backwards as you do that. And Yuri's going to want to make you walk backwards, pin you against the cage, and hit you with something. Does Yuri have the one-shot knockout power that Alex Pereira does? No. He kind of brutalizes people until they go out. So, I'm curious to see how this one goes. I really don't want to make a pick here, and I was kind of hoping that Hill won just because I think that he has been very disrespected by the fan base for losing to Alex Pereira, as if literally everybody else in the UFC, apart from Israel Adesanya, has lost to Alex Pereira. Well, Izzy lost, but, has failed to beat him. But I don't know, after seeing all that stuff that Yuri's done for the fan with cancer and donating all that money and stuff, I gotta really say, he's a good guy. But I do think that Jamahal Hill will win this. I think we're going to see a better version of him than we saw against Pereira. I think that Jiri is just too hittable for a guy who with as much dynamite in his hands and legs as Jamahal has, and I think that people just this is going to be one of those performances where people will have forgotten. The life cycle of an MMA fan is very small, and I think there are a lot of people who have only seen Hill fight Pereira, and I think they're in for a rude awakening. But I mean, I'd be happy for either of these guys if they won. Okay, up the card. Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov. Hell of a fight. I love watching Merab face grapplers. These names are a handful. Both these guys are fighters that are incredibly difficult to defeat. I think both these guys kind of melt their opponents, and are coming off of reasonably impressive performances. Umar's performance against Corey Sandhagen was so impressive especially because Corey Sandhagen looked so good. Merab's performance against O'Malley was fine. I mean, I expected it. Some people expected it. And O'Malley was able to figure things out against Merab near the end. But, before that, he had the fight against Cejudo where he looked fine. And then he had the fight before that against Petr Yan where he looked incredible. So yeah, both these guys kind of melt people. Umar, of course, we haven't really seen against as much high-level opposition. Bekzat Almakhan before Corey Sandhagen, Raoni Barcelos, who he knocked out. But yeah, Merab kind of melts people with his pace and his pressure. He tricks people, right? He thinks, okay, this guy wants to get me down, he wants to wrestle me, he wants to hold me, but he doesn't. He just wants to clinch you, right? He wants to hold you up against the cage. Maybe he'll do a bit of damage there. But he wants to hold you against the cage and demoralize you. Whereas Umar has this very cool rangy attacks with his hands and with his legs, and then he'll sort of rapidly change between striking at range and really cool kind of scrambly grappling against the cage. Umar, I think, is in competition with Aljamain Sterling for the best back taker in MMA. Obviously he's the young eagle, but they also call him, Mr. Rear Naked Choke because he gets people with it a lot. He's really good at taking people's backs. He's very strong in the clinch. So, yeah, this is interesting, right? And I think another interesting thing about this fight is that unlike a lot of Merab fights, it is not going to be defined by conditioning, right? So, for example, the Sean O'Malley fight was absolutely defined by conditioning. O'Malley was able to find some success against Merab, especially later on, but he wasn't able to capitalize on it because he was tired. Petr Yan got exhausted very early on against Merab, holding up his weight, basically. And Merab just melted him, despite, Yan having all the tools to beat a guy like Merab. And, of course, the Henry Cejudo fight. Cejudo was having his way with Merab in the first round until he was injured, but he was injured and pretty solidly outclassing him until, the fact that he's 40 years old took a toll on him, and Merab was able to take over due to conditioning. But I don't think that conditioning defines this fight, right? Certainly Merab could go for 12 rounds, but we also saw Umar in his first 5-rounder in his last fight wrestle all the way to a pretty dominant decision, right? I think that the secret weapon of Khabib's team is their conditioning. People talk about what makes him so great. One of the things that makes him great is that they wrestle with walls instead of in an open mat. But, their other secret weapon is just that they have really good conditioning, right? It's like they train from birth and they potentially give steroids to kids and they don't get tired, right? Khabib didn't get tired, Islam doesn't get tired, Usman Nurmagomedov doesn't get tired, and neither does Umar. Right? These high-level Khabib gym guys just don't get tired. So I think that certainly, Merab, I bet if this fight goes 25 minutes, after 25 minutes, Merab will be fresher than Umar. Absolutely. He might win the last round if it goes 25. But I think that Umar will certainly be able to keep up with him in the grappling and in the conditioning for the course of this fight as long as it goes, right? I think the obvious Merab game plan in this fight is to avoid letting Umar strike at distance, where he's shown quite impressive improvements recently and where he has, a pretty obvious advantage over Merab. And he's certainly, fast enough to close the distance with guys like O'Malley. But I guess the big question is, can he smother Umar against the cage? And honestly, probably not, right? we've seen guys like try and clinch Islam Makhachev against the cage. And I'm bringing Islam in, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And Islam is very good at getting out of those positions, right? Even if you're not a better wrestler than Merab, which who knows. Clinch escapes, I think, are a huge part of the Dagestani game. Their overhooks are really strong. And, these guys like Umar and Islam, they spend all this time in the gym with each other, right? And we see these dominant guys who are so good in the clinch. And obviously, when they're in training, somebody's in the losing position, and they're practicing how to get out against these really good fighters, right? And that is Umar against Islam, against Khabib, against whatever, right? So I think that it's not like he's going to be held up against the cage and be like, I don't know what to do here, just because I'm usually the one holding people up against the cage, right? So I think that he's going to come into this fight prepared in a way that we haven't really seen people be prepared for Merab like that in the past. I think that he's going to be able to reverse him. And I think that his kind of rangier attacks, we saw O'Malley have huge success with, for example, the front kick to the body, like a teep to the body, against Merab, to kind of slow him down, keep him at range, punish him for trying to jump in on you. And that is, people talk about Umar's kicking game all the time. It's beautiful. And that's a weapon that he has. I think you see where this is going. I think even if Umar is not a better wrestler than Merab, he's going to have better jiu-jitsu, he's going to have better escapes, he's going to be able to escape against the cage. He will absolutely lose rounds, maybe one, maybe two, but I think overall he is going to win this fight. I'm somewhat confident in this pick, so I'm going Umar Nurmagomedov by decision. But I can also see him submitting Merab, taking his back at some point, choking him. But I'm going to say decision. Okay, I have all these notes for Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan, and I don't get to use them, which is pretty sad. I did a lot of research, and I have not had as much time to do research here. I don't have any notes, so I am just going to blab. I think that this is actually low-key a more intriguing fight than Makhachev-Tsarukyan. And the reason I say this is because Tsarukyan is very good everywhere, but he's not as good anywhere as Islam. He's not as good of a striker. He's not as good of a game planner. He's not as good of a wrestler. He's not as good of a sort of submission grappler. Maybe he has a bit more power in his hands. Maybe. Right? But Moicano is a really solid jiu-jitsu player. And I think that that's an interesting element to this fight. I think a lot of people are really disappointed that this fight is happening. I certainly would have liked to see this in a proper camp. I like this fight. I would have liked to see it, with not on short notice, not on 1 day notice. But it's good that Moicano had a full camp for Dariush at the very least, who presents some of the same problems that Islam does, in the sense of someone who's going to have good takedown defense, someone who's probably going to have an advantage on the feet, someone who hits hard, right? So hopefully, and Moicano himself says, brother, I've been training for southpaws, he's been training for 5 rounds, all this. So we'll see. But yeah, where I think that Moicano has an advantage is you hit him and he says, I don't like this, and he grapples you. He's got that really good body lock takedown, and he brutalizes guys with ground and pound. He submits people nicely. That performance against Benoit Saint-Denis was super impressive. I think Benoit Saint-Denis is still a very impressive fighter. I think that, obviously France's best hope for MMA now is Manon Fiorot. But Benoit Saint-Denis is a really impressive fighter, a dangerous guy. And Moicano hurt him so badly in their first round just by taking him down and beating him up on the ground. I can see a world where Moicano has better scrambles than Islam Makhachev. I can definitely see that world. And I can also see the world where Moicano has been figuring out takedowns and figuring out, against, someone with really solid wrestling, figuring out how to work from the guard. Training to fight Beneil Dariush and training to fight somebody with good takedown defense, good scrambles, someone who's very physically strong, good at get-ups. It's not the perfect emulation for Makhachev, but it's a good one. So I think this is going to be a competitive fight. Not a fight where it's like, okay, this is even. Not like Islam versus Volk or Islam versus Poirier. But it's a fight where Moicano has a path to victory. And the path to victory basically is just submitting Islam from the guard or sweeping him and submitting him from the top. I don't think that Moicano is going to win any rounds in this fight, but it's not like he can't. But with that being said, like, he is a guy who kind of exists to be taken advantage of on the feet. He does not have the best chin, and he does not have the best striking defense. Like, he's very hittable, and he's not the most technical on the feet in terms of hitting people. And of course, Islam Makhachev is basically the hardest person in the world to hit. I mean, he is like bigger than Islam. He's taller than him. He's got a better reach than him. But I don't think that he's gonna have any advantage in the striking there. He's definitely got higher volume. But again, like, he takes a lot of shots, and he doesn't take them well. He gets dropped all the time, and he recovers fine, but he gets dropped all the time. And I don't know. I think Islam is going to hurt him on the feet and follow him to the ground and beat him up and knock him out. TKO. I'm very confident in that. But that's not to say that this is not a good fight, a fight where Moicano has no path to victory. Like, he's not a sacrificial lamb here. He could very well find some way to come back and submit Islam or sweep him and beat him up. Like, Islam is beatable. Poirier almost beat him, right? Like, he hurt him pretty badly. He was going to take him to a split decision, and there was a path to a finish in that 5th round for Poirier. We've seen Islam get hurt. We've seen him eat shots badly, right? Volk almost finished him. But I just don't think that. I think even at full camp, I wouldn't really trust Moicano here, and I think on 1 day short notice, even though he's been training against the right type of guy you want to be training against to take this fight short notice, I just think that Islam beats him. TKO. But, I mean, good luck to him. I'll be cheering for Islam because I love that guy. Absolute BMF, definition of a champion, by the way, for taking all these fights on short notice. And prayers up for Arman. I hope he recovers. I hope we get to see the fight against Islam soon enough. If Islam finishes this quickly, I hope that we can make a short turnaround on that. 313, 314, something like that. And yeah, thank you guys all for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, please. And I will see you. I'm probably after tomorrow, I'm gonna make a video on what to do with the lightweight division because this does muck things up. Like, Charles Oliveira is left in a weird place now. The Gaethje Dan Hooker winner, assuming that fight happens, in a weird place now. Holloway's in a weird place now. So we'll have to see where all this goes. But I'll think about it. I'll make a video about it. You'll see it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Absolute pleasure to have you, as always. Good luck to everybody on this card, and good luck to all of you. I hope that you have a fantastic time watching it. I know I will. And I will see you in the next one.